morning. I have with me today Tommy Pugh, Katie Childers, Shelley Brady, Courtney Anderson, and Noelle Stacy. A little over 5 years ago, an iconic Texas Ranger statue was removed from Love Field Airport in Dallas. The statue depicted Captain J. Banks, and it was erected in 1963. Doug J. Swanson, the author of Cult of Glory, the book that served as the catalyst for the monument's removal, said in an interview with The Hill, "I am not for silencing or abolishing pieces of history. I am for explaining them and giving them context." Was Swanson right? Should the monument have stayed? My goal with this speech is to persuade you all that monuments are valuable to society. I believe myself to be credible on this topic because I have done my research and I have seen the value of these monuments firsthand. I have 3 main points for you today. Monuments promote education. They create industry, and they define history. So first, let's consider the effect these monuments have on our ability to learn. Monuments promote education, sharing information about our history. History is very important. I think we can all agree on that. I would go so far as to say it's my favorite subject. I'm always looking for little tidbits of information, and monuments are an amazing source of this information. But how can we learn if these sources of information are removed? In the past decade, hundreds of Confederate monuments have been removed across the United States. Yes, they represent regrettable pasts, but in order for us to learn from them, they must stay. Monuments exist to remind us of the past, after all. Take the Wars of the Roses, for example. The inspiration for Game of Thrones, this series of English civil wars, is certainly interesting to read about, but even more interesting would be to see the site of the final battle, the Battle of Bosworth. I personally have never been there, given the fact that it's in England, but I have seen pictures and it's a very cool place. Near the battlefield, there's a well with a plaque inscribed by Dr. Samuel Parr in 1813. It reads, "Near this spot, on August 22nd, 1485, at the age of 32, King Richard III fell fighting gallantly in defense of his realm and his crown against the usurper Henry Tudor." Other plaques around the battlefield cast Henry in a less villainous light, but each provides a unique perspective and account of the battle. But what if this plaque was removed because someone didn't like Richard? Would that be fair? Would it be better to keep the memory and learn from it, or to destroy it and risk repeating the mistakes of the past? What about an impact that's more current? That brings me to the world's most consistent issue, the economy. Monuments support industry. Everyone knows that tourists mean customers, customers mean money, and money means the economy can grow and businesses can thrive. Now, we don't have many tourists here in Harper, America, but just an hour drive to San Antonio can show you just how much impact tourism can really have on the economy. The Alamo Square is constantly bustling with tourists and shops, even though it's inaccessible by road, all because of one little church that served as a battleground 200 years ago. If San Antonio is a tourist trap by Texas standards, Italy is a tourist trap by world standards. The nation has 1,500 monuments. A study by Bernardina Algieri, a professor at the University of Calabria, the region of Lombardy is revealed to have brought in 23,000 tourists in 2018, 69.9% more than 20 years before. That's 20% of the nation's tourism, and $451.3 billion were brought in that year by Lombardy alone. Why is this? It may have something to do with the 10 UNESCO World Heritage Sites within Lombardy. For comparison, Lazio, the region that contains Rome, only brought in 15,000 tourists and brought in $228.9 billion that year. That region only has 6 World Heritage Sites. You might notice that all of these numbers are about half the amount of Lombardy. Now, another big reason that these monuments should be preserved is the impacts that they've had on the past, or the lack thereof where they've been destroyed. Monuments define history. The Ming Dynasty was well known for its cultural advancements. They took China back from the Mongols and they took the world by storm. Trade spread west, exploration spread east, the economy flourished. There was one problem. The Mongols weren't gone. According to historian Arthur Waldron, The Ming could concede the Ordos to the Mongols, in which case the possibility of exerting control over much of the steppe would be lost, and the Ming's best hope would become a defensive and accommodative policy. So what did they do instead? They built a wall, the Great Wall. And today, the wall is one of the world's most iconic locations, despite starting out as a simple defensive barrier. Now, how about a wonder that was destroyed? How did that affect history? Allow me to introduce you to the Library of Alexandria. My fellow history nerds may have heard of this place. Carl Sagan described it in Cosmos as the promise of a brilliant scientific civilization and the brain and heart of the ancient world. Unfortunately for us and history, the library was burned down in the Siege of Alexandria by Julius Caesar. Most historians agree that this significantly slowed humanity's progress scientifically and culturally. So, are monuments worth saving? Let's look at the facts. Monuments promote education, sharing information about our history. They create industry, building the economy of the places they're built. And they define history, changing the way the world grows and changes. My goal with this speech was to persuade you all that monuments are valuable to society. The statue of Captain Walker was removed because of the Rangers' association with racism and police brutality. Are these reasons to remove it? I would argue no. In fact, I would argue that there are reasons to keep it, because the statue reminds us of the past and teaches us and helps us avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. Thank you.